Do you think being introverted and highly sensitive is a disadvantage as an entrepreneur? I used to think the same. I used to feel a bit sorry for myself for being so sensitive and needing so much time to recharge. But over the years, I've learned to leverage all of these as actually superpowers in order to build my own 7-figure business. And in today's episode, I'm going to share with you how you can maybe turn your introversion or maybe you're highly sensitive, how you can turn all of that into superpowers. Hello, and welcome to Fail to Win, the show where we love to make mistakes and learn from them so you can turn your passion into profits and live life on your own terms. I'm Amy van der Putten from FastForwardAmy, your host and coach, and I'll bring you a new episode with simple strategies every Tuesday. So overall, these traits are perceived to be weaknesses, right? So what I'm hoping to do in today's episode is show you that you can actually leverage them as strengths. And in order to do that, we kind of have to look at what does all of this mean? What is introversion? What is being highly sensitive? Because they're not the same, by the way. And before I do that, it might be useful that I tell you why my voice is like this. These past couple of weeks, I've had so many podcast recordings and parties, and I was like, wow, Amy, you really need to get your shit together because your voice is just struggling. And then yesterday, the sun was shining finally. By the way, summer in Europe, wow, where has the sun been? And I sat outside all day and my voice kept getting worse and worse. And then I realized, oh my God, it's not because you've been talking too much. It's because you actually have allergies. So this voice, this raspy little podcast voice is brought to you by the weather. No, the trees. Yeah. I used to think, by the way, that being so sensitive and needing so much time to recharge was like a me problem. I didn't realize it was actually just a thing. I used to work as a fitness coach, so that means I would be seeing people like just all day long, 6 days a week. And I thrived on the topic that I was teaching them. I loved my clients. And still at the end of the week, I would feel so depleted. And it took me a really long time to figure out that it had nothing to do with them or what I was doing, but I was just peopling too much. And I had to just people a lot less. And I think growing up in a really busy household with 3 brothers, I remember as a kid and as a student as well, I would wake up really early and I would really enjoy studying while the house was silent. And looking back now, it makes so much sense. I still have the same. I love it in the morning when my boyfriend is still asleep. I just have the house to myself and there's quiet. I know for all the parents with kids out there, I know that's not possible for you. But I used to do this even when I had my plus kids in my house. I would just wake up early and I would just have the house to myself, no noises, just have some time to get myself ready for the day. And I would really, really enjoy the quiet. And, you know, as a kid or as a teenager, you don't really know about being an introvert. You don't know about being highly sensitive. But looking back, it makes so much sense because, you know what? Let's start with part 1. So I have 3 parts for this episode, 3 ways or 3 secrets that you can transform introversion and or sensitivity into a superpower. So for me, these are my secrets of how I've turned this into a 7-figure business superpower. I want you to know that even with online entrepreneurship, even with a personal brand, it is possible to build all of that whilst being introverted. And you might not notice about me, but I don't do a whole lot of networking. I don't go to a lot of events. I don't interact with a lot of people. I create a lot of content, but that doesn't mean I'm interacting with a lot of people. So I'm going to talk you through all of this. But before we do that, we need to look at what are introversion and high sensitivity. So introversion, I'm going to read what ChatGPT gave me, is a personality trait characterized by a preference for inner thoughts and feelings over external stimulation. Introverts tend to be more reserved and reflective, often seeking solitude or small group interactions rather than large social gatherings. So a couple of things. Characteristics of introverts include energy depletion from social interaction. I was at a wedding Friday and I could just feel myself getting depleted while one of my friends, as the evening progressed, she started literally jumping up high, and it had nothing to do with alcohol. She was just so recharged by the social energy and I was so depleted. Depth, reflectiveness, preference for solitude, and thoughtful decision making. Okay, this all makes sense. So often introversion and high sensitivity, like they can overlap, but they're not the same. So an introvert might not necessarily be highly sensitive and the other way around. But obviously, both traits can lead to having a preference for being like in a more quiet environment or a smaller social circle. So my friends are always trying to take me to festivals, and I always joke, I say I would have to be really, really drunk before I could enjoy it. I actually don't drink alcohol anymore, but yeah, I'm just not made for really big social gatherings unless I'm the person speaking on stage or unless it's a topic I really enjoy. So for example, I was at a conference with 1,000 people a couple of months ago. I really enjoyed that. So it's not that I don't, it's just that I think I care less about music and more about someone speaking on stage. So that also has to do with it. So the topic, but okay, back to the trait. So introversion, we talked about that. Then high sensitivity is a trait, or, you know, what they say, HSP, highly sensitive people. So high sensitivity is a trait where individuals have heightened sensory processing and emotional responses. Highly sensitive people are more attuned to subtleties in their environment and can be easily overwhelmed by high levels of stimulation. Yes, that is me. Key characteristics of highly sensitive individuals include deep processing, which often leads to strong emotional responses. Yes, high empathy. So easily picking up on other people's emotions. I have this even in a Zoom call, I can almost sense what people are feeling. Sensitivity to sensory stimuli. So bright lights, loud noises, strong smells. I literally ordered a new sleeping mask yesterday. So definitely overstimulation. So easily overwhelmed by too much activity, which makes like you need time to retreat and recover. And emotional responsiveness. They experience emotions more intensely and may have stronger reactions to both positive and negative experiences. This is all me. Haha. And obviously this is why we're making this episode. I'm always like, I don't know if anyone cares if I talk about shit like this, but I've come to realize that the more personal my episodes, the better they do, because a lot of people recognize themselves into what I talk about. So I used to think of all of this as being disadvantages, but then I started realizing that, well, one, I didn't need to feel guilty about not wanting to go to a festival. So my brothers are DJs. Two of my brothers are DJs. One is a photographer, and I am definitely what they perceive as the boring one, which there are some limiting beliefs about that, but I feel like they always think I'm boring because I don't love big events, but I just don't like being surrounded by so many people. I don't like the loud noises, the bad smells. I don't love it. And they do, or I mean, I could maybe like it more if I'm under the influence of something, but I don't do that. So hence, I don't really do those things. So we have a very different life. I enjoy recording a podcast on a Monday morning at 9 a.m. and they enjoy, you know, DJing at 4 a.m., which is like, there's a really big difference. But I also know that if I go and party and I do all of those things, I can do it sometimes. But I'm just going against my nature. And this is something I've learned in the past couple of years. I've learned to stop looking at it as a weakness, and I've learned to start looking at my strengths. And some of my strengths are, for example, my creativity. If I can be by myself a lot and I can recharge by being alone, which is, by the way I usually tend to define, and everyone does this in a different way, but I tend to define introversion versus extroversion as, how do you recharge? Do you recharge by being surrounded by people or by being alone? One of my team members, Sandy, she's like a triple extrovert. She needs to be surrounded by people and lots of stuff in order to recharge. She goes to almost like every single festival this summer. And I just could not imagine doing that. For me, I recharge and I get creative by being by myself in my soft office with a bunch of like post-its on my wall. She gets ideas from hanging around people. So our creativity gets stimulated in a different way. For me, when I'm alone, I always joke about this, but I can look at a water bottle and get inspired. I can really be like, oh my God, I hear a song and I get inspiration. And I don't even need other people to get creative or other things. I can just, as a kid, I used to sit in the car and my brothers would be playing on their Game Boy or whatnot. And I would just like look outside at the trees and I would get ideas and I would make stories in my head. And this is one of the things that a lot of introverted or highly sensitive people, so I'm just going to look at it as one group and you get to define who you are, which traits you do or don't have, that a lot of us have, is that we don't really need external stimuli or other people to inspire us. We get inspired by a lot of the things happening on the inside. So for me, this is one of the reasons why I don't necessarily need a lot of podcasts or books or other people's content. I get it all on the inside. And the more time by myself I have, the more creative I get. So last year I took myself on a vacation, just a 1 week workation by myself. And I got so many ideas, which other people could not even imagine. And one of the other things I tend to employ as a strength is that when I don't have ideas or I need to prepare coaching sessions, for example, so I do most of my coaching on Thursdays, and that means once or twice a month, I prep all of my coaching sessions. I get a lot of my ideas for those sessions simply by closing my eyes and tapping into my clients in that group. So I always tell my clients are always like, what's the curriculum? And I'm like, well, that depends on you guys, because I will always tap into the entire group and use my empathy to feel what's happening. And from there, Hey, just a quick break because I have something for you. If you're here and you've been listening for a while, you probably noticed that somewhere along the way, I kind of started changing the angle of my episodes. I stopped talking about how to start your business and started talking more about how to scale your business, how to lead, how to make more money independent from your time. And along with that, I have been talking more and more to CEOs, not just beginners anymore, although I love coaching those. I've silently been reshaping this podcast to really be the buddy for any ambitious CEO who's, starting to lead a team, who's having to deal with mistakes, and also who's bumping into their own nervous system. And this is also exactly what I have been adding in my product suite, because 2 years ago, I decided to start one-on-one coaching again, and I opened up a high-level mastermind, including one-on-one coaching and 6 monthly retreats. And currently, I am back to enrolling new members because I only choose a couple of people a year to work with so we can scale their business to $1 million and beyond. And right now, I have some capacity opening up to enroll a few more masterminders and to go on a retreat together. So if you've been listening, you're like, well, I do multi-six figures, I like online marketing, I'd love to scale, and I'd love to have Amy as my personal business coach. I would love to see if we get to work together. So if you're interested in that, go ahead and apply so we can chat and see if this is a fit, which goes both ways, obviously. So either go to the link in the description of this episode or just go to Instagram and message me mastermind, and I'll personally message you. It's not automated, and let's chat and set up an intake call. Okay, talk soon. And from the combination with my creativity, I create my curriculum, I create my coaching sessions. And that empathy, I used to think, oh, it's so heavy to feel so many people's emotions. But now when I'm hosting an event for 60 or 100 coachees and I see all of them in the room, I can have an outline and I can adapt the outline to the room because I get to feel how they're feeling. So maybe you're someone who feels really drained because you feel so many emotions from other people. But what if you stopped looking at it as a disadvantage and you started looking at it as a superpower? Because holy shit, you get to feel how other people feel. And that makes you able to then course direct or redirect what you're doing with them and what you're offering them. I think empathy is one of the biggest things that we get to use to make content, to make podcasts, to make course materials, to help other people. So empathy is a really, really big advantage. You just have to make sure that you manage yourself so that you're not constantly feeling all of the emotions. And I'll talk about that in the next step. But so superpowers get to be your creativity, your empathy, your clarity, because maybe you are very strong visually or you can map out stuff. You get to focus really deeply, and maybe you are really good at visualizing what you want to create, and you're a visionary because you get to see all of the things you want to make, which makes you, I don't know, good at decision making or good at having ideas. You know how many people never have ideas? You might not realize, you might feel overwhelmed because you have so many of them, but that is actually a superpower. It is a privilege to have too many ideas. It would be far worse if you had none. So I think the first secret that I've applied to my own introversion and high sensitivity is just embracing it and not apologizing for it. Still, I do still feel a little bit like I'm the boring sister compared to my brothers. But on the other hand, they like to come to my house to chill because it's really cozy here. So, yeah, I think my introversion is actually my biggest superpower because it allows me to create new course materials, challenges, webinars, because as long as I have enough time by myself, I get to create really kick-ass things for my clients. So, yeah, flip the script is what I would tell you. The second secret, and this is one I felt guilty about this for the longest time, but I've used all of this to restructure my work environment. And I mean that both physically as well as emotionally. So I used to dream of being this boss woman with blazers and high heels and go to a fancy office until I became that person. And I had an office and I had a team. And I realized I really, really dreaded putting on the clothes and the heels and having to be ready for the office and sitting there all day long. And I started realizing that whenever I was at the office, I got no work done. I could do no creative work at the office. And every day I had meetings, and I for the longest time I felt like, oh my God, I really want to cut down on these meetings and I want some more days to myself to work on ideas and marketing and my programs. And I felt really weird about it until at a certain point I realized, like, you know what? I'm just not going to be able to make a lot of progress if I don't get more white space in, because it's in the white space that I get ideas, and that's where the magic happens. So I told my team, like, hey, we're going to restructure some stuff. And on Mondays, there was going to be no more meetings. I'm not going to come into the office anymore. And I started thriving. And then we turned Tuesdays, full days of meetings, into half days. And then on Fridays, the entire team met up at the office and I would stay home. And slowly but surely, I have stopped apologizing for not going to the office. I have tapped into my superpower as a business owner, as being a good CEO, is seeing the strategy, is doing the marketing for my business, is being a really good coach. And in order to do all of that, I have to have really high energy levels and focus levels. And I do that by working from home. So I work from home 90% of the time. I go to the office on Tuesdays sometimes, and I will often also stay home. So for example, right now I'm preparing a challenge for my clients, which means I'm actually doing that from home. I can't work creatively at the office. I can work creatively by myself in the different rooms in my house I've set up for that type of work, but I cannot do it when I'm somewhere where I don't feel cozy. So instead of looking at that as a disadvantage, I've just tapped into it. I've explained it to my team. I'm like, hey, it's not that I hate you guys. I really like you guys. I like working with you. It's just that in order to like myself, in order to tap into my creativity, I need to do that here. So that's a really big one. On top of that, so it's just also the boundary. So I see a lot of people who don't do this. They have clients every day. They're on the road every day. They don't batch it. And I have literally hundreds of clients. I have team members. I have 2 businesses. But the way I make sure I still have high energy levels is by putting in boundaries. So I batch all of my client calls on Thursdays, sometimes also on Fridays, but not on Mondays, for example. Mondays are the days where I just have fun with myself. Like right now, I'm recording podcasts. And I did not mean that in a sexual way. But so Actually, yesterday I was making my plan for the upcoming month, and I knew I had to set up one-on-one calls with my clients. And I was like, oh, I had a Monday, and I saw that there wasn't a lot of things on my calendar that day. And I was like, oh, I could include that in the one-on-one calls. And I'm like, no, Amy, because you really enjoy it when you have the Mondays with very little social interaction, usually after very social weekends. So I have to sometimes restrain myself from then planning stuff on there. And you might recognize this. Maybe you plan meetings in over your lunch break. Maybe you say yes to things when you should really be saying no. But I think what has happened to me over the years is I've felt how low my energy gets when I don't do it. So I'm starting to get to this point where my team reminds me what happens when I go over my boundaries, and I feel it. So I'm finally getting into this flow where I just know what my boundaries are and how much I can handle. And this would mean the difference between saying, oh, I'll work until 6 or 7 and have client calls, and then realize I still need to, process what they said and input it somewhere. And then I realize, oh no, if I put in client calls, it's from 2 until 5. And I usually don't do them in the mornings because mornings are my golden time for ideas. And so I'll put social time in the afternoon. Mornings are just for me, for example. So all of those things are, it really helps me to just, how do I say this? To value my own energy. I think this is where, I think that the problem is that we value time, but we don't value energy enough. So you might value your time. You're like, oh, well, a client call at 6 or at 10, like what's the difference, But maybe at 10 a.m. you could be making content that drives your business forward. And in the afternoon at 4 p.m., you're not really in a content making mode anymore, but you could be social with your clients. So I'm not saying I give my clients a lesser part of my brain, but I will say that creating content for me is a bigger challenge than being in a conversation with clients, because I've been doing this for so many years. I have my 10,000 hours of coaching under my belt. So I'm just really, really good at it. So it requires a little less of my energy. On the other hand, if I start my days with social calls, in the afternoon, I won't have enough energy left to create content. So I've really managed to set up my work times fully according to my calendar. And maybe you can do that by simply tweaking 1 hour a day, by moving up things by 1 hour. That could work. And then I think in order to structure your work for success, it also means structuring your self-care for success. So for example, for me, I looked at what was coming up yesterday. I was journaling and I was planning my weeks and my days, and I realized, okay, so I need sleep. I need enough chill because it's really difficult for me to come down from highs. When I have a really busy day coming up, I'll sleep not so great because I know what's coming up. And so if there's chaos in my days, it impacts my sleep. So what I shouldn't do is plan in early work sessions for myself before I go live, because I go live every day at 9 a.m. currently. I'm flexing my creative muscle. If I try to plan in work before that, then I have a really fritzy morning and it's not great. So I prioritize 7-8 hours of sleep. I know the moment I have less than 7 hours of sleep, I get a little bit cranky. I get more insecure, which leads me to creating not such amazing content, to being a lesser coach. So for me, making sure I sleep well and I plan my days well is just, I can't not. If I don't do that, I'm just not the best version of me, not in my relationship, not in my work. So I think if you want to get good at work, you got to get good at you, and you got to get good at your self-care. And that means not being on your phone at night, not waking up and scrolling, not taking your phone into the bedroom, having a nighttime routine, having a morning routine. And I cannot believe how bad most people's work-life balance is. And it's fully up to them. It's not up to their clients. You're the person who leaves the notifications on. You're the person who communicates through all kinds of channels with your clients. You're the person who doesn't hold them accountable. And the reason you're doing that is often because you're too tired. You're too tired to tell them that they're stepping over your boundaries. You're too tired to set your boundaries to protect your energy. And so everything starts with your self-care. If you don't manage yourself well, you're never going to be able to manage your business well. So yeah, and that also means not working in bed, not working on the couch, not working at the dinner table, in the kitchen. I have really strict boundaries in, for example, my office. My office is really cozy. It's a mess right now, but I have really soft materials in here. The light is really cozy. I have post-its on my walls, and I will rarely work downstairs. I will always go into my office and just work here, because I know if I start working a lot on the couch will become not such a chill spot. And if the couch isn't a chill spot, then my entire house will start feeling like work, and my brain will have a really hard time turning off at night. So it starts with recognizing your own behavior and then being strong enough to actually prioritize that self-care and to really, it's like, it blows my mind how many people are so highly sensitive and take such bad care of it. And I don't mean that in a judging way, but I'm like, how are you still standing? That could never be me. Structure your work environment for success, both physically as well as digitally, and make sure that your self-care is planned in first. For me, that's my workouts, my sleep, my strength training, my supplements, all of the S's. Because if you don't do that, you're never going to last, and you're going to feel that every piece of bad news in your work is going to, it's going to distract you. So last but not least, one of the things that has really helped me as an introverted, highly sensitive entrepreneur is also being able to turn off, because I have passive income set up and I love launching. I really, really do. And I'm also a high sensation seeker. So launching really gives me a lot of dopamine hits. I love it when the sales come in, but I also love that I get to take a day or a week or multiple weeks off and still have income coming in. So I took a month off for my brother's wedding in Australia. Don't know if you remember, a couple of months ago. And I had all of my content planned out beforehand, and I had my funnels set up, and I had courses selling while I was offline. And I didn't have to create content. I didn't have to be online. I wasn't going live. I wasn't even hosting coaching calls. Yet I was getting in like a couple of hundred, a couple of thousand a day. Like, it varied. And that just gives you permission to take some time off. So I think if you haven't set up passive income yet, it's probably because you don't know how to, you think it's not possible for you, or you don't have the time for it or the discipline. And I would love to share with you my big secrets as to how you can set up your own passive income funnels. And I have a 3-step formula that I have been tweaking over the past couple of years, and I've applied it to my business. I'm still tweaking it to this day, but it's working. And I've gotten to the point where every morning I wake up, and once I turn on my phone, which is not near my bedroom, I turn it on and I see that I got sales in during the night. And that's something I wish on everyone. So if you want that too, I want to invite you to my 60-minute training. It's worth a lot of money, but I'm gifting it to you for free. And you can go and register by sending me the word formula, or by going to the link in the description of this episode. But I would say, like on Instagram, on FastForwardAmy, just text me the word formula. I'm going to send you the link to the training, and I'm going to help you set up that passive income. But for now, I just want to invite you, what would it mean? So like 2 weeks ago, I was at the breakfast the day after the wedding of my brother, the Belgian wedding, by the way. He got married twice. And I had 140 euros in sales that morning and midday at noon. 140 euros in sales is something you could imagine happening, right? Those are not amounts that you cannot imagine. And I got that imagine you get that in 30 days. 30 days straight of 140 euros in sales. That's 4,200 euros. That's a lot of money. That's what most people make as an entrepreneur. So if you want to learn how you can set that up yourself, come and register for my training. I'll help you set up your passive income, and it's really going to help you, being highly sensitive or introverted, to not have to show up and interact and be selling actively all the time. There's a difference between showing up versus having to sell. I think it requires a different type of energy, and you're going to feel so much more chill if you know that sales are just coming in even though you're not actively selling, which is very difficult for a lot of introverted people. So make sure you come and join that training. Click the link in the description as well. And I want to recap today's episode. So first and foremost, the first secret to introverted success is embracing it. Embrace that you're introverted and highly sensitive and look at the upsides instead of only the downsides. You are more creative than other people. You have a lot of empathy. You get to focus and think really deeply. Embrace that. That's a superpower. Secondly, make sure you structure your work environment for success. We mean your self-care environment, your time management, your boundaries physically as well as digitally. Maybe you should not be driving to the office all day long. Maybe you should just create a nice little workspace at home. And third but not least, make sure you're leveraging passive income for success, because if you're always having to actively sell, you're going to feel fairly burnt out if you're not recharged enough, okay? Hope to see you in my training about passive income, and I really hope you enjoyed this episode. This was a really personal episode, difficult with my voice that's struggling so much. So if you liked the episode, I don't know if you know, but if you, how do I say this? So podcasts work in a very special way with the algorithm. It's not like Instagram. It's more just based on, what you are doing as a listener. So if you like this episode, if you would like to subscribe to the podcast or leave a review and some stars or share this on your socials, I know you think it doesn't really matter or I'm a really big name, but actually my English podcast doesn't have that big of a reach because I have a lot of people in Belgium and the Netherlands who follow my Dutch podcast. But if you would share my podcast to your stories or just leave a review or some stars, it would mean the actual world to me, okay? Thank you so much for doing that, for taking 1 minute of your time, and I hope to see you next week in another episode. Bye!
You want to make money on Instagram, but you're not exactly sure what you actually need in order to make that happen. Chances are you're creating content and you're trying different things, but it seems to not really click together and you're wondering why those other people are getting in all of those sales, but you aren't. Well, in reality, even if you're only selling for 30 euros every day, that's an extra 1,000 a month if you can make it work. But so many people actually can't because they don't see the full picture and they are missing one key element. That's why I've made the Instagram income map for my clients, which is a PDF workbook that you can go through in 1 hour. You'll discover the 8 building blocks that determine whether you just attract clients on Instagram or just talk about sales, or that you can actually go from attracting clients to getting in sales every single day. And I want that for you. So you can go and grab the workbook now, available for only 27 euros for a limited time. Go to fastforwardamy.com/income map and I'll send it over to you instantly, or click the link in the description of this episode.